Sprocket is hands down the best tank building game out there, but it's definitely not the easiest to learn. In today's video, I'm covering the basics of Sprocket Tank Design, giving you everything you need to know to build a tank and win a scenario. Let's get started. So, just as a quick disclaimer, I have a weird tendency to film videos whenever I'm sick, and that includes today, so apologies if my voice is all messed up. I'm going to try and keep this video a bit shorter today, especially after my last video dragged on forever, so let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed or you'd like me to go over in the future. Now, before we dive in, let's do an overview of the user interface from the compartments view. Left click will grab and place items. Pretty simple. The scroll wheel is used to zoom in and out. If you hold your middle mouse button, you'll orbit around the tank. To pan, hold down Shift and hold down the middle mouse button as you drag your mouse around. Clicking on an object with the right mouse button will select it for editing. This is what you usually want to use when trying to open up a compartment or edit it. Now let's say we wanted to select multiple items. In order to do this, hold Shift and right mouse button click items. You can see they're now both highlighted in yellow, which means they're both now going to be acted on when we edit them. This is where the scale, transform, and rotate tools come in. Right now we're in the scale tool, which means we have these red, green, and blue, do you call them rectangles? Yeah. So when you click on one of these and start moving your cursor around, it will scale the items up in the axis that you select. And down here, you have buttons to change between resizing, scaling, moving, and rotating. Over here in the move tool, we can now move them along the side of the compartment. And over here in the rotate, we're now given these little orbital rings that we can click on, drag, and move into place. Using them in conjunction will let us do basically whatever we want with these parts. Now what if we don't like what we just did? Fortunately, Sprocket has an undo keybind which allows us to basically undo whatever we just did. You can, though, redo as well using Ctrl Y. Down here in the bottom right, we have a couple different view modes as well. This is the standard view, which allows us to interact with compartments and components as they normally look. And here we have the internals view, which lets us look inside the tank and interact with stuff inside it. We also have the armor inspector, which allows us to test armor and see if it can be penned or not. We also have the filter tool here, which allows us to change what items we want to select, such as in the visibility mode, it changes what items we can select. In the internals view, it lets us hide specific items and they become all grayed out. That's mainly it for the overview of the user interface. Now let's go on to make our own tank. Alright, so let's start working with the generated hull. We're going to want to make this a little bit more slopes than it is right now. Don't mind the steering wheel poking through, we can fix that later. Starting out with generated, it is pretty easy to get a vehicle going because you can just click on the faces and drag them to your liking. We also can just directly edit everything in here. And you can click on a number and type in an exact value if you want as well. Now, let's go into freeform editing so that we can play with it a little bit more. The freeform editor gives us a lot more granular control over how we edit the vehicle, because now we can like go to edges, right click here, and then split it to get extra edges that we can edit. And we can give this vein a pike nose if we really want to. I'm not going to go super in depth on freeform editing because I have a 55-minute tutorial just for that. So if you want to learn more about modeling vehicles like this and get wild with things, go check that video out. Now let's work on getting a turret installed onto this hull. Generated hulls make this a bit easier to work with. You just place the turret down. You don't have to do anything else. For freeform hulls, you need to cut a hole for the turret to slide into. To do that, let's go to the Faces tab here, select all the upper faces, and go over here to this button that says Create Hull. Click that, and a bunch of lines have now appeared. Let's delete those because we don't really need those. And now we have all these edges. Over here, we'll want to switch to the Edge tab and then select all of the edges by holding Shift and going around like that. Let's move them forward. And to scale it down just a little bit more, hit S and then drag inwards. Now we have a hole, so let's place a turret down. Make sure it snaps in the middle. You'll see that as you drag it along, it'll stop and then let go again. You want to look for where it stops and then leave it there. Now we'll want to go underneath and then zoom right in about here and grab this part. You want to grab the turret ring and then drag it so that it goes right over the hull. Want to increase the diameter a little bit as well. You don't have to get exact with it, just enough that it'll sit on nicely. The main goal with aligning the turret ring is so that it doesn't collide with the armored plates that make up the roof of your hull. We cut a hole for the turret ring to sit into, so we don't want it to clip into the sides of that hull a bit too much. Keep in mind that it's a tongue twister to describe hull and hull because they sound almost identical. So apologies for that. And there we go. Now let's go in here and drag the faces out so that it's bigger than the turret ring inside. There we go. Alright, so before moving forward, it wouldn't hurt to check and make sure that our turret is nicely aligned. You don't have to do this for generated mode because it punches a hole on its own. For freeform though, it does help. So what we're going to do is hold Control and right mouse click up around here in the back. This should select all of the faces that make up our roof. And if we go into the internals view, we see that they don't poke through past the turret ring. That's a good sign, and that means everything is nicely aligned. You'll also notice that this guy's highlighted red here. This is the turret traverse motor. We'll come back to aligning that in the future. The near future, I should say. So back at our turret, I'm not exactly going to make a T-29 style turret with it, but I'm going to try and aim for something kind of like that. To make it a little easier, let's tweak this just a little more, and now let's go into Freeform Edit. The process for this is going to be not too hard, surprisingly. Let's start by going into the Edges tab, right-click this edge, split it, and drag it down. And then we'll want to press S to scale it out a bit more. That should work. Now let's come over to the back here. We'll go back into the Faces tab, right click to select this, and then we'll press the E key followed by the Y key. This extrudes it out in a locked direction and allows us to basically have an easy time setting it where we want it to go. Let's go back into the Edges tab and we'll drag these guys out and drag these in. Now, if we want to get more detailed with this, what we can do is select these edges again, split them, and then right click to grab these guys, and then drag them out just a little bit more. We'll repeat that here, and then do it one more time here. Now we could keep doing that forever, or over here we have a smoothing angle. Let's bump this up to about 25 degrees. So when we deselect it, we can see the side is now nicely smoothed. This will work perfect for what we need. And with that, we now have a somewhat cursed combination of a hull and a turret. Perfect for what we need. It's safe to say our turret basket has plenty of space underneath it. We could put fuel underneath it later, but instead we can take this and drop it down. We don't want to go all the way to the bottom because the suspension parts would be in the way. Now we'll also want to deal with this traverse motor, or hand crank. Because we're currently in the interwar era, there's no motor attached to it. Say we do switch over to the mid-war period, for example, and we do want to add a motor to it. Let's go about that big. You'll see it takes up a lot of space. Fortunately, we can rotate this device. I like to put it this way so that it takes up the least room for violating crew area, which we'll get to later. You have to make sure that the teeth of the wheel line up with the edge of the turret ring like this. If it's too far away, it won't work, and you'll see this red highlighted area there. Speaking of the vehicle era, I have it set to mid-war here, and usually the Dunes scenario is locked to the interwar period. I plan to actually take this into a late war scenario later on, so let's keep to late war for now. Now the vehicles that we're going to face later on in that scenario have pretty good penetration. We're going to want to set the armor now before we start placing components, because if we place all the components and then deal with the armor later, it's going to lead to a lot of potential collision issues. In order to set the armor, what we need to do is go into the Face tab and select all the faces we want to adjust. Then go over here to thickness and increase the slider. You do have to watch out because sometimes it'll act funky, like in this case it's extruding it downwards. In that case, we want to go to the Corners tab and change the thicken mode to face normal. That's my favorite. You can play through these to change how it works. My usual recommendation is to start with face normal, then edge auto, and if not, just run through them. So we'll set the front to 180 millimeters. We'll set the side to 80 millimeters on the front and 60 millimeters in the back. And let's set the top to about 15. Over in the hull, we'll want to set these guys to about 100. And then let's give these guys about the same. We'll give this about 70 because it's sloped. And these guys, let's do 80. So to add a mantlet, which is required before putting down a cannon, we want to go over to the Firepower tab here. We have a lot of options, although I'd recommend sticking away from the blank one just for now. Those are usually meant for custom mantlets, which is a little more of an advanced technique, not really suited for this tutorial. So right away it looks a bit small. I'm going to hold shift and scroll up to make it scale bigger before bolting it down. There we go. Now let's add a cannon. We want to go over here to the cannon tab and click this guy. You'll notice that it also snaps to the middle here, so let's make sure to take advantage of that, and the cannon is now nicely set inside the middle of the mantlet, and it also looks to be of good size. Now we want to go over to the internals view. By default, we got a 120mm with 440mm of propellant length. I'm going to make mine a bit bigger, but I'll keep the caliper as is. That should work pretty nicely. If you look at it from the side, you'll see that these red boxes demonstrate the traverse collision boxes, so that when it angles downward, it has to clear this area. When the cannon angles upwards, it has to clear this area. In order to fix the collisions, we need to, well, move it backwards away from the armor. We can just grab it, and there we go. We also can grab this guy, which is the lane drive. And if we want to change it further, we just drag the sliders. We don't have much more room to elevate upwards, but we did have some more room to wait, I got it backwards. We didn't have much more room to depress the gun, but we do have more room to elevate it if we wish. Now if you zoom in closely, you'll see this blue line here. This indicates how off balance the cannon is, and you want this line to be as short as you can make it. In order to fix this, let's select the recoiled segment here, and we increase the length, we see that it starts to become a little more balanced. Let's select this guy here and give it a much bigger number. We'll want to type in about 2500, and you can see the line is now very small. You don't have to get it all the way down, but the closer the better. The thickness of the barrel also comes into play, so if we take this down to just 20mm thickness, we see it becomes a little off balance again. We'll want to increase the length again in order to compensate. And then from here, while you have it selected, you can give your cannon a muzzle brake of your choice. Alright, now let's get on to the crew. We'll want to go over here to the crew tab and go to the internals view to make placement a little bit easier. For the driver, we can select this pose. We don't have to do it, but it's the easiest to work with. Depending on if you want 1 or 2 people in your hull, you can either place them in the middle or place them off to the side so that you get 2 guys to work with. Now you do have to watch out because the crew don't necessarily clip with the armor. They'll just start punching a hole in it. So like up here, his head's poking through. If you were to shoot this with a cannon, it would not actually hit the armor. It would just go straight through. So to deal with this, let's move him back a little bit more. And we'll want to grab his feet and move them forward a bit. We also can select these to pitch his feet back, and then just play it a bit more until we get a pose that we like. And if we really like the pose, we can save it and then load it on the other guy. Now let's put the steering wheel in a slightly better spot and scale it down a bit. This is where crew roles come into play. Here we'll want to have the operating mode set to steering controls. And now we have an error come up that there's no viewport. The driver can't see what he's doing. To fix that, let's go to equipment and grab this. We can scale it down a bit if we don't like how big it is. And there we go. We now have viewports out. And he's now good to go. If we want to decorate this up a little more, we can go to hatches and give it an extra little bit like this. Not the prettiest, but it'll work. Turret crew is up next. Let's do the sitting position and put 2 guys in here. We'll want to have them positioned so that they don't collide with the gun and also don't collide with the sides. Now we'll want to have the first guy over here be the gunner because the lane drive is on his side. We could move it over, but this works. Let's have him as the gun layer. Other gun layer. Oh, looks like one of these is too far, so let's fix that. Let's move it a little closer. And assign him as the gunner. Looks like it's missing a gunner sight, so we'll go back to the firepower tab and put down a gunner sight. We can have symmetry for this. There we go. Next up, this guy will be the loader. And he can do just that because being the loader is a fairly intensive job. And while we're in here, let's take a look at the turret traverse motor. Because we're still in the late war era, we can uncheck that, set it. That'll work. And here is where we want to pay attention to the turret traverse max speed and the time it takes to get there. You usually don't want this to be more than 3 or 4 seconds. The lower you can get that number, the better. And the higher you can get this number, the better as well. So to balance it out, let's bring the ratio to about this so that the time to max speed is 2 seconds, which is good enough for something armored like this. And the max speed is still acceptable. And the best way to find out is to go for a test drive real quick. Look at that. The traverse speed is pretty good. And the vehicle drives forward. It seems our ally has already encountered the enemies, but he can't really do anything because we didn't put ammunition in the tank. To fix our ammunition problem, let's go to the cannon tab and grab an ammo rack from the back. Not from the back, let's place it in the back. We'll put it there. Let's drag it forward so that it doesn't clip with too much, and then scale it up to hold more ammunition. It looks like if we go all the way up, it will clip out the top, so we don't want to do that. Let's play around with the orientation a little bit. Looks like we need to turn off the default snapping for rotation for now. That gives us a little more precise control over how we rotate it. That'll work good. It's not clipping with this up here or the armor in the back. Modifying the tracks is up next. We'll want to select the road wheels here to get started, and a lot of settings pop up. This is definitely one of the more crowded menus in the game, so I won't be able to cover everything here, but I'll try and briefly go through the stuff. Now, if you ever want to change the size of your road wheel base, you'll want to disable the Sync to Chassis button here, because then it gives you a little more fine control over things. I'm going to keep it where it was for now because I kind of like how the setup works. Over here in the wheel tab, we can change a couple of the settings, like if we want to go with bigger wheels. We can change their thickness, we can adjust their offset. Down here in the suspension tab, we can play with the rest angle if we want to change how much play the arms have. Another way to do that is down here in the torsion bar. Adjusting the torsion bar is kind of a two-step setup here. You can play with the length of the torsion bar and its diameter. The thicker you make the torsion bar, the stiffer your suspension will be, and the longer it is, the more smooth your suspension will be. Usually, if you want a smooth suspension, you're going to want to make the diameter a bit smaller and make the length a bit longer. We'll set it about there for now. The rest of these settings are largely cosmetic, although we can go through here and change what wheel type we're using, which we can do with the other wheels as well. Don't mind the white box wheel. Next up, we need to decide whether we're using a clutch braking or twin transmission powertrain. Clutch braking is a more compact transmission style that locks up one track in order to turn the tank, while twin transmissions control their turning by shifting one transmission down to a lower gear. Our vehicle is large enough that it should have little issue fitting a twin transmission system. Alright, to get everything all nice and positioned, I'm first going to also go back to the engine and let's make it a V12. We want to set it now so that we don't come back to it later and have to reposition everything if we want to make it bigger. So there's a lot of ways we can do this. What I'm going to do is take it and put it off to the side here. Now what I need to do is split the drivetrain twice. We right click to select it and then click the split button up here. It then gives us these little blue orbs that we can move around. And also pay attention here. As I move this up and down, this runs into collisions because the angle of the drive shaft is exceeding a limit of, I think, 5 degrees? Maybe 15? It's something pretty small. We'll also want to watch it here. One of the downsides that we do have to note with twin transmissions is, at least in this configuration, we don't have a lot of room for gears. So if we want more gears, we're going to want to do an alternative setup, which involves taking them, rotating them like this, and then placing them adjacent to the engine. We're going to want to come back to these guys and remove them. Slide this guy over here. And then we want to take the engine and rotate it 180 degrees. And then we're going to want to take these and split them again down the middle. And then let's take these and there we go. This now gives us a little more room to add gears into the transmission if we want to. We'll come back and set the gears later. Alright, let's get the engine tuned next. This is one of the more vague areas of the game. I'm going to start with the simple method, and then I'm going to go to the more precise method afterwards. Over here in the RPM tab is where we're going to want to pay attention. Make sure you're in the advanced mode, by the way. Our upshift RPM should be about 90% of the safe limit. In this case, 3600, 90% of that is about 3300. You don't want to set it all the way to the top or you'll have issues trying to shift later on. Like you'll get to the higher gears and it won't shift. 90% is a good value. The downshift, we want to be about half of that. The idle RPM doesn't really matter much yet. That might change in the future. Now let's go over to the transmissions. We want to set our first gear. Let's go down here for about now. We'll click the G1 divided by N in order to get the smooth curve here. You want a curve like this to make your shifting work better. It is very important that you have your reverse gears synced to your drive gears. You want them to match up for twin transmissions because otherwise you will have difficulty turning. Looks like these changes cause some collision issues, so let's adjust it back up and let's see how it drives. Acceleration is good. Turning is a bit slow though. Our RPM is only about 300, so that indicates our first gear is too small. To fix this, let's make the first gear a bit higher and then sync the reverse gear. That is very important here. Our turning speed is now a lot nicer. We're getting some higher RPMs out of the engine and the turret can't really keep up. Now that was the rough method to get some approximate numbers, but there are better ways to go about it. For this, we want to use the sprockettools.github.io gear calculator. Here we can plug in a couple stats about our vehicle and then get the optimal gear ratios out of it. It'll also tell us the ideal upshift RPM, downshift RPM, and give us an estimate about how fast the vehicle can go. And if we plug those numbers into our transmission, it looks like it actually builds up speed fairly nicely with those numbers in place. That is good to know. Oh. Looks like we still need to put fuel in this tank. Adding fuel into the tank is generally one of the easier things to do. Just go to Powertrain and Fuel Tanks. We have the option of internal fuel tanks or external ones. Let's go with some internal ones for now. We'll just place the box down and then go to the scaling tab to change how much fuel it has. It does look like it's colliding with the torsion bars, so we'll want to lift that up. 1,000 liters of fuel should be more than enough for whatever this guy will need to tackle. And with that, all that's left is to start decorating. Most of the parts that we'll need are in the crew, and then you have to go through all the various tabs. And you can select basically anything from here and just place it on. There are also some parts in the compartment's structural tab, so we'll want to use these as well. There's also fenders over in the tracks and fenders tab, along with some other spare parts that you can slap on. They don't have a practical use yet, but that might change in the future. There's even more decor over in the powertrain and vents, exhausts, and fuel tanks tabs, so keep these in mind as well. One of my favorite tricks is to take objects like this and either rotate them around or inset them in slightly using the translation tool. It opens up some options for retexturing parts without necessarily having to change the armor model at the same time. Hatches in particular are pretty good for sinking inside the vehicle. What I'm going to do here is take them, rotate them just a little bit, and then sink them in. Now you have a kind of custom hatch without having to really use complex parts. Another useful trick, hold Alt while clicking one of the translation arrows and it will allow you to duplicate a part straight on from the original. It's really efficient when you need to mass produce items like this. Now that we have a little bit more time to play around with the thicken tool, I'm coming back to the turret face and adjusting how all the edges extrude. So here I'm going to the edge manual and clicking next edge until this blue line points along the face that clips right next to this other face. You can see that if it goes the wrong way, then we get this weird little clipping out here. We want it to go this way, along the face that it intersects. Once we made that adjustment, it's now looking much better along this edge. We have the welding marks visible, which is very nice. With placing parts now done, let's go and deal with the paint job. We have a lot of options here for various paints. In this case, let's go with this one. We get a lot of settings over here that we can play with, such as increasing or decreasing the scale. In this case, we probably want to go with a bigger scale, and looks like this paint job is a bit rough right now, so let's clean it up a bit. Give it just a little bit of dirt. There's other settings here that you can play with to change how the paint looks, such as if you want to give it some more color, or change what type of color it has. I think this custom paint job looks a bit better, so I think I'm going to stick with this for now. Now, if you're looking for more paint jobs like this, the first place you'll want to check out is the official Sprocket Discord, which has tons of paint jobs. The second place you'll want to check out is the currently under construction paint catalog in the sprockettools.github.io website linked in the video description. Which, speaking of that, it has a much more built out decal catalog. Let's take a look at an example of embedding one of these into our tank. Let's try this dirt damage decal by, hey, I know that guy. So we'll want to click on it because the website says to do that, and now to place it down, we're going to just want to place any decal. Let's put it down here and paste the decal in, and it should update. We don't want to grab that. So we're going to want to pull this back a little bit to avoid that weird seam. And there we go. We now have some dust effects on the bottom. And there we have it. This ended up being some weird German Leopard 1 looking kind of deal with some Soviet piked nose mixed in with it. Well, only one way to find out if it works. Alright, so this scenario has only static infantry firing guns at us as we drive out there. We also have no allies, so... Oh, here's one of them. So, we look closely. Oh. They penned us in the front, apparently. Looks like there's a bug in the armor somewhere. Yeah, that's not good. Let's fix that. Oh, there's one right in front of us. So, they're not even aware we're here. So let's take advantage of that and aim just a little bit above him. I'm not sure if that went through or hit him or what. That was a bit low. That definitely hit. Oh, there's the next one. That was too high. Yeah, that definitely jacked him up. What we're going to do now is let's attempt to just run straight to the border. Because there will be infantry to the sides of us. But because we geared this well enough, we are fast enough to clear their traverse limits. And we made it! Before wrapping up this video, let's go over some of the most common problems that people run into and some solutions to help prevent them or fix them. If your gun won't traverse correctly, check the gun lane drive. If any of the values are negative, such as in this case the time to top speed is negative, you want to fix your center of mass or change the ratio so that it supports your gun's time to top speed. If your tank keeps getting stuck when trying to climb obstacles, make sure your road wheels are able to maintain contact with the ground. A couple people have pointed out with this design that, at least as right now, the hole sticks out a little too far, which means that if we were to ever drive over a big obstacle, the hole would get stuck on that obstacle and then the vehicle would get stuck. So to fix this, I'm going to take these points, drag them back, and there we go. This should have an easier time clearing obstacles now. And if we wanted to make it even better, we could take these wheels and move them a little bit forward. A very key detail to keep in mind is that, at least with the current Sprocket updates, these wheels do not actually provide any traction of any sort. So only your road wheels will actually allow you to move and climb stuff. The same goes for your sprocket in the rear or the front. If you set it that way, it cannot help you climb over anything. So make sure to rely mainly on your road wheels and keep clearance for them as necessary. If your tank tends to tip forward or backwards in strange ways, it is likely due to the center of mass being off kilter. Sprocket tends to lock the center of mass to the very middle of these platforms, so if your tank tends to tip forward or backwards, shift the entire vehicle closer to the center and that should fix your problem. I hope you found this video useful in your endeavors to master Sprocket. It seems like I failed to make this video a short one, but that's probably due to how much stuff there is to cover. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.